guys, how you doing? Adam back with the Studie 289 rebuild. So last time I think I showed you I had the heads off and there was quite a bit of wearing on some of the bearings, especially the third. You can see that clearly, but the middle four cylinders, 3, 4, 5, 6, I noticed had more wear than the first and the last two. So I don't know if that's standard with all of these engines. I don't know if that's common, but I certainly noticed it in this one. But that's not the big news. The big news was after I turned it upside down, took the oil pump out, and disconnected the rods, and got to the crankshaft, we discovered this. There's the other part of it down there. This was completely sheared. This is completely broken. And the engine had been running, we don't know how long for, but it was running actually quite well with a slight sound, a very slight, not a knock, I would call it maybe a slight clank, but it wasn't a proper knock, and it was only noticeable when the engine was idling. So that's the big news. That's what was causing the slight slight sound, and it really was a slight sound, and it was really running quite okay, pretty reasonably with this broken crank. So these cranks apparently for a 289 are getting harder to find, and it's a pretty unique crank. So I'm going to try and get one of these locally in Australia, and if not, there's a couple of options. I can import one from the States, but even in the States they seem a little bit hard to come by. The other option, of course, is to put a crate motor in it. I don't really want to do that. And the other option would be to try and find a whole engine, preferably a 289 Studebaker. But again, that's going to be expensive, very expensive if it was rebuilt. And if it's not rebuilt, then I'm no better off than what I have here as far as knowing the reliability. So if I go ahead with this one, it's going to obviously need a new crank, but a whole new set of rings. The pistons and the cylinders look pretty good, although my friend checked them and said he reckons that they're a little bit looser than they should be. So I don't know what the tolerances are at the moment. Definitely would need new rings, but whether the pistons needed replacing, that's something else we'll have to look at. But definitely, yeah, it's going to be a fairly major rebuild at this stage, and that's without looking at the heads. The heads, I think I showed you before. Around the valves, they're fairly clean. There's carbon, definitely. They need a clean, but there's nothing that looks too irregular there. The valves still seem to seat pretty well. So I've also got to decide what needs to be done as far as the heads. But this is certainly, this little baby right here is the reason for pulling the engine apart, and from there we're going to have to see where we go. So stay tuned and we'll see where we go from here. Incidentally, if you look closely, it was explained to me that it looks like it's probably been like this for a little while. In other words, it's done a bit of driving with the broken crank. The two surfaces look a little bit as if they've worn in together. So this is really, for me, quite a remarkable thing, that we can have an engine that for a 289 puts out there's a fair amount of torque in there, and that's been running, and it's been running fairly flawlessly. No major sound, and no major loss of performance or power or anything like that. Been running with this broken crankshaft, so it's really quite amazing to me. Yeah, the whole reason for the engine being taken apart was because of that little baby right there. Quite amazing. One of the other interesting things was I've read on the Studebaker forums a lot that these engines are largely sort of indestructible, that they're really over-engineered, and also they're fully forged. Everything, pretty much the entire engine was forged. So they're really pretty bulletproof engines, and you hear this a lot. And I was just reading a couple of days ago in one of the forums where they said that most of the time where people think their Studie engine needs rebuilding, it doesn't need rebuilding. It's just a minor thing that needs fixing. They're normally pretty good. So here's a major stuff up in the breaking of a crankshaft. One of the interesting things is this main bearing here is 30 thousandths over, so that's been replaced, whereas these ones here, they're all original. They're not over. So again, that was pointed out to me as something that could have been a contributing factor. The fact that this right next to the brake, that this had been was 30 thousandths over the bearing here. Whether it was rebuilt but not properly, and that contributed, I really have no idea. But certainly pretty amazing for the engine to have been running as good and strong with very little sign of anything wrong, until there was a very slight sort of metallic clunk or clanker just on a slow idle. Again, when I revved it, it totally went away. So I suppose for some people, they will have heard about that sort of thing before. It does happen. But for those who aren't so aware of that, it can explain what appears to be a fairly minor engine noise, and was really something quite terminal. The engine could have blown for sure under full pressure. So yeah. Anyway, on.